What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 108 of Value Town. I'm ChanManV, and joining me today, of course, is Noxious, and back is DisguisedToast to join us in talking about all these awesome topics that we have today. What's up, guys?
Not much, man. Just tired of seeing Toast everywhere. I do the game show and he's there. I do Value Town and he's there. I go on
Seriously.
Twitch and he's there. Like he's just fucking everywhere. I can't get rid of that guy.
Quit following us, dude.
Yeah, I just wanna be friends, Noxious.
I love you,
friends.
man. I love you too.
But yeah, excited to be on again. Lots to talk about this week. So yeah, excited to get into it. A lot of juicy topics.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this week was, last week we obviously had more discussion based talk, and then a week later, then there's just all this drama going on. It's not just complaining about stuff, but actual bona fide Hearthstone drama, which we don't get a chance to experience very often, surprisingly these days. So definitely going to be talking about some of that. But we're going to start things off by talking about the big news that was announced yesterday, which was the nerfs, or at least some of the changes, I believe, that are coming in the update 7.1, which will happen at the end of the month. Also, we've had Max and Dean both just doing some interviews, so little tidbits here and there we'll bring up. Then we'll jump into some of the HCT drama that happened last weekend. Maybe talk a little bit about what's just the HCT coming up with America. And then some global games drama with Ponyhoff, followed by the new expansion being leaked, since we didn't get a chance to cover it last week because we ran out of time. And then at the end, we'll do some Q&A. I know some of you guys are wondering, when are you going to do Mechatours? Because I mentioned that. I don't think we'll have time to do Mechatours, but I promise next week, we've got tons of cards to talk about.
Oh man, I promise.
I promise you next week that we will talk a lot about Mechatours. Okay, so all the folks that are sending them in, I'm getting them all. I know you guys are sending them in, so don't worry. You guys will, hopefully your cards will make it on the show.
You're making a liar out of me, man.
I'm making a liar of myself.
I would have Mechatorx Workshop.
Oh, did you? Oh,
shit. I was like, guys, come on in. We'll have
God.
discussions about topic in Mechatorx.
Oh man, I feel bad.
We'll show up and they're like, Noxious, come on. Trusted you, bro. And I have to disappoint them.
I feel bad, but there's so much drama to talk about. It's just hard to fit in because Mechatour we want to spend a lot of time. So
yeah, probably.
Okay, so let's start off with the big news, which is we're finally going to get some nerfs to some power or some cards that people have been pulling their hair out about. And Polygon in an article, and now it's been covered by a lot of people, but Polygon yesterday released that in an interview with just the Hearthstone team that they are going to be nerfing 2 cards, Spirit Claws, which are going to be upping the mana from 1 to 2, and then Small Time Buccaneer, which is going to be lowering its health from 2 to 1. So that on top of the rank flooring, which will happen at ranks 5, 10, and 15. And what that means, guys, is that once you reach ranks 5, 10, and 15, you will not be able to drop below that. So
for that
alleviates
season.
for that season, alleviates some frustrations for people that end up getting to a certain point and then they drop a couple ranks, and it's just like, oh gosh. I know that happens a lot to me, at least in that rank 5 area. Actually, the rank 5 area is one of those things where it's just like, you get to rank 5, then you probably drop down to 6, and then once you clear that, then it's just you usually get home sail into legend. But okay, so anyways, let's talk about the change. What do you guys think about the Spirit Claw change first?
Well, the Spirit Claw change seems correct with what Blizzard has said in the past. They even said, I think a couple of months ago, when they introduced Spirit Claw in Karazhan, they were really sad to see that aggro shamans were using it because their intent wasn't, it's not meant for them. It was meant for a more mid-range control-y kind of weapon. So, once people start doing Pyroblast worth of damage with them, they're like, oh, okay, we messed up somewhere. So I think this is kind of them going back to it and, changing it to fit their original vision. Mm-hmm. And now you don't have to worry about that Spirit Claw into Spell Power Totem on turn 2, which is one of the most frustrating thing I have ever. Because it's not only is it clearing your minion, like it's that RNG aspect of it that just drives you nuts. It's like, okay, he rolls spell power, he kills my Turntrog. I guess I'm never gonna come back in this game. So
Yeah,
I think the Spirit Claw change is really nice.
I actually think the turn 4 totem, the air totem, into the Maelstrom portal Spirit Claw 3 hit
That
is probably
triggers
the
me
most,
more.
That is
Yeah.
the most frustrating thing for me, at least. Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. I think, yeah, with the days of that are, I don't know, it might be over. I mean, it's definitely much worse with 1 mana, just that increase in cost. But who knows with aggro shaman? You just never know.
I mean, regardless, let's just put it that way. They still have Flame Tongue that can put in Argent Squire if they feel like it, and add more early drops to make use of it. Well, on the flip side, mid-range Jade was already cutting to 1 or 0 Spirit Claws, so they don't really give a shit. So they should, not get affected too much by that. So the deck that gets the most affected is definitely the aggro shaman by both nerfs, really. Now, I think the nerf was correct. Like, that was the right nerf, but, now they have another 2-mana weapon in... Actually, they have 3 2-mana weapons now with Stormforged Axe, the Claws, as well as the Jade Claws. So it's basically, they're bloated on 2. Jade Claw still remains much better than Spirit Claws in most ways, I think. I don't think that's going to change at all.
Yeah, I think for sure it's much better, especially when you're talking about building the Jade deck that's got synergy and just that investment, right? That Jade Claw is going to be better in that way. Yeah, with Spirit Claws, I mean, I like the change for sure, and I think that was one of the most obvious ways to change it. I think it would have been interesting if they would have chosen a, just a specific type, like they did with spell damage, but a different specific type of minion that would give them a little bit of an upgrade. It didn't have to be, like +2. Maybe it's just +1 or something like that. That was another option they could have taken too, because then it would have forced you to build a deck that was around Spirit Claws. And I think that's what
Fury minion.
Yeah, and that's what they meant for Spirit Claws originally. They wanted you to build a spell damage shaman, like a Zeus shaman or something like that.
Yeah.
And that never happened.
Zeus Shaman
right?
didn't really rent, like, it only ran Malagos and Drakes, really. Like, that's the thing with
I had the 2/5 thing
forces
or whatever.
is you play, like, Blood Mage in every deck that needs spell damage, and then you play Drakes, and then you play nothing else.
Right.
And then...
Yeah.
And
I mean,
was
that
the
was
issue.
my impression when I saw, Spirit Claw. Because Spirit Claw didn't really get used, like, in the first couple of weeks of Karazhan. Like, it took a little, like 1 or 2 weeks for them to, get integrated. Because before then, I don't think people ran that much spell power. Like, when it was first introduced, I'm like, oh, cool, spell powers. We're going to see, like, maybe Ogre Magi, Blimmy Channels, Azure.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Malagos, combos. Like, that'd be so cool. And then it turns out, people just put in Blimmy Channels, Azure and start hitting you in the face with it.
Turns out when your hero power creates spell damage, you don't actually need to build around it. So I think that was just a massive design oversight.
That's what
It's
I
like,
mean. That's what I
here's
mean.
this cool thing that you need to build around, except you don't have to build around it. What? And it just creates this, like, aggravating swing for people when they get, tricked by the spell damage roll.
I'm personally am very impressed at how Shaman can just take all these new cards and figure out how to go aggro with it. Like, when they introduced Maelstrom, it's a board clear. And when you think about board clear, you generally think, oh, slower decks. Nope, I'm an aggro. I'm going to clear your board. I'm going to summon a minion. And like the pirate, it's like, okay, Shaman doesn't have pirate cards. Like, Rogue has Swashbuckler, and Warrior has the Zos First Mate and a bunch of other pirate. Shaman's not going to use this. Nope, Shaman. I'm going to put those in my deck. And then when you think about the Jade mechanic, you think, okay, it's ramping up. From small to big and bigger and bigger and bigger, which is, something slower decks do. And, they managed to figure out, okay, J Lightning can go face, J Claw can go face, and we're just going to go face with them. Like, I'm not.
Does it really surprise you, Toast? Come on. I mean,
does.
I think the very first thing people probably try is the most ultra aggressive ways of using cards, and then they realize, oh, okay, it sucks, and then they end up trying different things. But I feel like everybody, especially when there's been classes that already have an aggressive archetype established, at least at some recent history, like Shaman has, I feel like that's the most obvious thing, and that's something that designers would test too, right? Just right off the bat.
That's a theory, right? Like I feel like a card like Jade Lightning just puzzles me, right? Because like on one hand, you've got Crackle that got rotated out, and everybody's like, "Fuck yeah, Lava Burst is now alone with Lightning Bolt. That's fucking amazing." Until Jade Lightning comes along and says, "Hey, here's another face card." You know why Starfall couldn't go face? You know why they changed that? You know why Wrath can't go face? Because Jade Lightning shouldn't. And it's one of those situations where I'm just mind blown at the amount of face cards that can be allowed in one
I think
class.
that's a change that's probably is something that might be coming up too. Is that Lightning
maybe
just can't hit face? Because now we're going to talk about Jade. We're going to talk about it in a second after these, but the power of Jade, right? A lot of people are talking about the rise of Jade because of these changes. But before we get into that,
the rise,
exactly,
the continued
dominance, exactly, not the rise of Jade, the even
more
more dominance of Jade, right? So let's talk about the small time Buccaneer change with the health being lowered to 1. A lot of people, again, that was definitely one of the options that people threw out there, and it seems like that one's the one they decided was the best one. What do you guys think?
It's definitely very interesting, especially in terms of aggro matchup when both of you guys have, small time Buccaneer at the start, right? I wonder if there's going to be any like holding back on your small time buck, because if you slam down small time buck, your opponent's patches is running to that small time buck. Statistically speaking, the number one card that kills patches the most is other patches. Because there's so much aggro matchup, the patches are just killing each other. But now you don't run patches into patches, you run patches into your the opponent's small time buck when they play it. And no, that 1 health is huge. Maelstrom Portal is going to be insane. Living Roots, you can maybe summon the 1/1s now. In the past, you kind of don't want to because the small time buck can trade off for free. And coin hero power can take out small time buck with mage, rogue, and druid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge blow, definitely. That's a lot of power lost.
It seems like it's properly powered now. Given that it's a 1/1 with big upside, right? If you actually tech weapons.
Here's the thing, man. What if I created a 1-mana 3/1? How good would that be, right? Like the reason it seems correctly powered is really because of patches. Because now it's a garbage card. Like on its own, it's actually really, really bad, and it's only good because by proxy you get to play patches with it, right?
Right.
So the second copy of it in your deck is always gonna suck. I'm kind of sad that Maelstrom Portal is such a good card against small time. So if it were to be played, then you're still going to go Shaman, because why not? But I don't expect this card to make as many waves as it used to. I mean, now Phantom Knives is good, the Rogue Dagger is good. Honestly, a lot of the good classes that were on the cusp of insanity are now potentially insane. And I think what we're waiting for, at least on my end, is to see whether or not some aggro pally list can come up, because that's been stifled very heavily by the patches meta. And it was like on the cusp of working before people figured out the metagame was going to be all pirates.
I think there's a possibility of it, but obviously the aggro pally will not be as effective as what we've been seeing with like aggro shaman to keep those decks that it counters in check, right? Keep the control decks in check. So there's going to be this flux that we're going to have to see if it works out from a standpoint of meta.
Yeah, like a lot of decks right now run certain anti aggro stars. So like even Holy Smite and Priest, they are playing it to smite down that small time buck. But if it goes down to 1/1, they don't really have to. They can clear with the cleric now. They can use Potion of Madness to run the patches into the small time. That's another big one. Potion of Madness can now be played and kept on turn 1. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a huge nerf, and we are definitely gonna see the rise of some other decks. But small time buck's plan is to reduce your health by 10. Over the course of 2 or 3 turns, and people are teching for that. It's like I don't want to start the game off at one third of my health gone. But at 1 health, it's so easily taken out. Things are going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, people were already, figuring out ways to deal with it. So now that it's like, in a way, easily dealt with, even just with hero powers, it's dealt with. That it's going to be dropped by a lot of people. Yeah, and well, people will figure out different things. People will find, again, maybe the Argent Squires come back and things like that. But the aggro decks are not going anywhere. The aggro decks are still going to be strong. It's just will they be strong enough to keep the other decks in check? So the other change was the rank flooring. So this, I think, as big of a change that Small Time Buck and Spirit Claws is, and I think they were huge, and we absolutely needed them. I think the rank flooring generally for Hearthstone, just all skill levels, is probably the biggest thing here for me, and it just alleviates frustration. Just like frustration levels on the ladder. That is one topic that we've been talking about on Value Town for like the last, I don't know, 10 weeks now. So this is directly addressing that. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think like I can't think of a bad thing to say about this. I mean, there's gonna be more people at Legend and higher ranks than
Of
right
course.
now, but
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing because ultimately, the rank doesn't really dictate your skill level. Like if you're suddenly on a hot streak and you go to rank 3, compared to you're on a losing streak and you go to rank 7, it's like your skill level is not going to change in that 10 games just because that number is different, right? I mean, it's a reflection of your skill, definitely, but a lot of people just see that number and they kind of like, oh my god, I gotta get rank 6, rank 5, rank 4. If you're on a losing streak and you drop back to rank 7, it's so demoralizing, and it allows people to mess around at the rank 5 and 10. So if I'm like at rank 5 0-star, I can play fun decks. Like I don't have to worry about try harding with serious deck. I mean, obviously this means a lot more people are gonna hit Legend because you're gonna get a lot more players willing to play janky bad decks. And if you're playing a serious deck, you just most of the time you're gonna take the free win, and maybe hit a Legend a bit easier, but it's okay. Like,
I mean, that's the point. That the only drawback is really the star economy, right? Because at those thresholds, anyone who loses at 5 and 0 stars ends up never going below that. So if somebody like on purpose loses once they reach rank 5, they're injecting a star into the economy every single time they do so. And the only way, there's actually no way to counterpoint that. Like there's just really no way unless the opponent just keeps losing and also sticks himself at rank 5 and doesn't move at all. Then you have like this pool of dudes at rank 5 who don't move and just keep winning, conceding, winning, conceding. But in general, you'll notice that the Legend ranks should be more populated. On the flip side, some people might also say, you know what, I'll just stay at rank 15 and play fun decks. So at least, I know that I can, because right now one of the fun pockets to be in is 16 to 14, where people play actual fun decks. The 20, they're farming portraits, so they just play aggro. And higher up, they just, on the way to 5, they just keep playing real decks. So 16 to 14 is like this weird pocket where people got out of the nightmare of the farmers, and then they get to experiment with stuff. And if rank 15 is that, then it actually gives us a threshold to stay at if we just want to play with absolutely random shit, like beyond random.
Yeah. I think it's in at 5. I think 5 is a really, really good one too, because you can get up to 5 and then let's just say you're a streamer, right? You can just sit at 5 for a while, just mess around and play some different decks. And then when it comes time to need to get to Legend, you can just spend that, whatever, 3 to 7 days or whatever, however good you are, to get to Legend. Yeah. And you can just choose that moment instead of having to, okay, if I play a crappy deck, then I'm just going to drop rank, and then now I'm going to have to put in more effort to get those ranks back on top of trying to get, just some progress there. So you definitely have that ability, but you're, the whole point of the star, I guess inflation, I guess you could say, or just the influx of all these extra stars, it makes you think about whether, when people do start losing, what happens to the MMR, for that person too. Because let's just say I lose 20 games in a row at rank 5, am I going to start playing like rank 10 guys and just be going all the way up to Legend by playing rank? I mean, there's definitely potential abuse of this, and that's probably why they've tried to avoid doing this for some time.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess technically it shouldn't touch your MMR. Is that wrong? Like not by much.
People had like the bottom Legend and can see like 100 games in a row, and they eventually get like
like rank 20.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is, like one of the best ways to do that would be to bracket ranks, right? Because like if you bracket MMR between ranks, you say, all right, rank 5 to X is gonna be like that's gonna be the MMR, and then they can just create this artificial gap where you can never go below a certain MMR if you're within that bracket, and so you can never end up farming some of the lower end. So if you're in Legend, I imagine in the next patch, if you concede 100 times, you're not going to face rank 10s. That's my assumption. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would assume that they're going to add this this failsafe to prevent, abuse, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, it would be super easy to get to Legend if that's the case, right?
Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think they do have to put some, like you said, some kind of different parameters around matchmaking, or just at least the matchmaking itself. Whatever algorithm they use is going to have to be modified a little bit. But overall, I think it's great. I think we're heading in the direction where eventually we'll just do away with numbers. We'll have probably the bronze, silver, gold, platinum. I mean, it works. I mean,
Well, they had it at first a long time
yeah,
ago.
they did.
Though.
Actually, they did. You're right.
Yeah, and it had to
What
be
was
scrapped
it?
because
What was it?
didn't.
It
It was like you had bronze, silver, gold, diamond, platinum, or something.
Was
or
it?
platinum,
God, I don't even
diamond.
remember. Oh my gosh.
It
Maybe
was
you're right.
really, really bad because you couldn't D rank is the problem. Like
Yeah.
you did not lose stars. And it wasn't like, you didn't have like 50 stars on your way to diamond. It was 3 stars, 3 stars, 3 stars. So of course the grind was very quick and it wasn't a reflection of how good you were. I mean, you could win with the worst deck at the top rank because you never lost stars.
Yeah.
But again, keep in mind it was meant as a mobile game. And the ranking system was kind of an afterthought in terms of how much it really matters to the players who will engage this game. And it turned out that people wanted esports out of this, and Blizzard had to respond with some ladder system that they put together. I don't want to say last minute, but they had to come up with one fairly quickly, right?
I mean, it's easy. I mean, their argument for the current ladder system has always been it's very easy to understand, and it is. It's super easy to understand. It's just there's no feel of achievement. Even when we get these 5, 10, and 15s, I mean, I don't even know what the avatars are for 5, 10, and 15. So it's like I don't feel any distinguished, accomplishment of getting to 5, 10, or 15. Whether it's artificial or not. Most users will not feel that. And when you get to platinum, when you get to diamond, or you get to masters, it does feel like an accomplishment in other games. So I feel if they can move in that direction, and so it'll take some other changes too. It won't just be okay. Literally, the rank 5 is platinum now. It's not going to be quite like that.
Yeah.
But something like that, I think will end up working for Hearthstone.
Long term, probably.
Yeah. Okay, so with the nerf changes, let's just talk about what we think is going to happen, just in terms of our predictions of where the meta is heading, and anything. I guess maybe the good things that you see, and then maybe the bad things you possibly see.
Oh man, this is so hard to say because if you remember the Yoxaron nerf against Aggro Shaman, Rockbiter was nerfed and Tuskar, right? And everyone, like when that happened, everyone was like, woohoo, like jumping for joy, like everyone's doing right now.
Yeah.
And like within the month, everyone's like, oh my god, mid-range Shaman. And it's true, like that's what happens when you at the time it was a great idea, and I still think it was a good nerf. Losing to Doomhammer, Rockbiter, or Tuskar into Totem Golem was one of the worst feelings ever. But it just goes to show it's not gonna be like all sunshines and rainbows when
nothing changes is what you're saying. Like to be frank with you, like what's exactly. These changes don't matter because the biggest problems you have with the game aren't small time Buccaneer, that the underlying problems that led to it being nerfed. So expect more Shaman.
I agree with those sentiments. I think that when you only change 2 cards, that's not enough to, especially when we're talking about a single class. I mean, those 2 cards had to be changed. It's just, I think 2 of probably 20 changes that need to be changed for them to actually have a wave in the meta. But with only those 2 cards, Shaman was they were so rich in diversity and possibilities that removing these 2, the old mid-range Shaman that was dominant in 2016, that was still pretty good. That is still pretty good right now, and it doesn't even have those cards.
With Reno decks, it's not. That's the thing though. Mid-range decks that aren't Jade can't compete with Reno, right? Like that's the big issue that mid-range Shaman faced, and so that's why they swapped to aggro or Jade. So like the classical mid-range Shaman right now is probably not going to be much better after the nerf.
No.
But like one of the things that I want to see, and I think maybe Spirit Claw's nerf is going to be big, because that chip damage on minions combined with AoE is actually a pretty big deal for aggro sometimes. When you get that Maelstrom portal, you chip away at something, set up a kill on it. So it makes dealing with aggro decks better. Whereas now that they lose that, they're going to have to substitute it with something like I envision a world where eventually the decks slow down and then mid-range Jade comes up and then aggro Shaman with Squire comes up again. And then we're back to aggro Shaman, just going in. as they do, except with more one drops. Instead of small time and patches, you play double squire and something else. No claws besides the Jade claws. And in that universe, the classic mid-range shaman still doesn't fit. I think we could still see Spirit Claws being played for value in mid-range lists. Like, I wouldn't even be
Really?
surprised if it was still run as a one of, like it is now. Like, it's still achieving its purpose in some spots. So, I mean, if you're running double Drake Thalnos, maybe it's fine. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah, like a lot of the times I see mid-range shaman, like when they're equipping Spirit Claw, either they're using it early on to deal with aggression, or they're doing it in the mid game where they have a lot of mana to float. Like that 2 mana is okay. And with the nerf of small time buck, you don't, it's not as imperative to have that Spirit Claw to start punching it. A Maelstrom again, takes care of that so nicely. And if you're running the Jade Pirate Patch yourself, patches kills that straight up too. So definitely a huge blow to aggro decks. I mean, it's interesting to discuss which 3 classes get hits the hardest by the small time buck change. You got Pirate Warrior, you got Rogue, and you got Shaman running them, right? Both, like all 3, I don't know like the extent, but they definitely get affected on different levels.
Yeah. And some of them were just running it for defensive reasons more than aggressive reasons. Because the rogue, it's obviously good for the rogue because the hero powers is so synergistic with Buck. But in some ways, like the rogue had to run it too because they couldn't even compete against the aggro shaman and aggro warrior. Right. Yeah, it was more defensively than anything else. And then it works out great when they're playing against the control decks, right?
Either it survives early and get like 9 damage in, or it's a great tool for your opponent's small time buck to kind of just trade everything off to stay even. Because before they only had Swashbuckler, which isn't really doing that much. But with the introduction of small time buck, it's like they can do something on turn 1. So either they go even, they don't fall too far behind, or they get a big health advantage.
It made hero powering like much more valuable too on turn 2, where that hero power hasn't been the greatest hero power in Hearthstone for until a small time buck came. So, overall, I think aggro shaman still be a thing. I think honestly, until lightning is not face, like you can't hit face with that. I still think shaman's still going to be, it's just going to be present at least, in what they can do with aggressively at least.
Right.
So the question is whether is Jade Druid going to suddenly become super strong, because that's what people are talking about. That's what I'm afraid of, because the Jade mechanic is one that I feel like is super problematic right now, and it's not one that can change because it's thematic to the release. So what do you guys think?
Jade Druid has, they have parts of their kit that's very obviously pointed to, as in like Jade Idol. Like people see Jade Idol, they're like, oh wow, that exists, so Control Warrior can never exist. And another issue people brought up is Jade is kind of autopilot, which I want to say it's as autopilot as Dragon Priest, which is basically just playing
right.
It's linear. You can write a bot for it. It's linear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Jade Druid is similar to that. Turn 1 do you have Jade Idol, play it. Turn 2 do you have Walker, play it. Turn 3 do you have Jade Blossom, play it. And then stuff like that. But they have a bit more decisions with Innovate and Nourish and all this choose one stuff. I don't think Jade Druid can ever be a dominant deck. I like the fact that they keep other control decks in check, but I just don't see a meta where Jade Druid can ever be number 1, because they have very glaring weakness to aggro, and they have very glaring weakness to combo decks, and as well as rogue. And I don't think Jade Druid can ever reach the number 1 deck like aggro shaman can, because if your aggro Jade Druid is the popular deck, you can easily play counter to it. If the popular deck is aggro shaman, like you can build a Reno Mage, but sometimes they're still just going to kill you.
Exactly. They draw right, they're just going to beat you.
I mean, it's going to be a lot worse, right, with the expansion. So that Reno Mage probably gets an extra maybe 2% over, and that's a big edge. Like in terms of matchups, getting an extra 2 to 3% is actually pretty big, but possibly more depending on what they substitute the aggro package with. Like Jade Druid, to me, people view it as a mid-range deck. I hear that a lot all the time, or a combo deck, and I'm like, this is a control deck that happens to do nothing. because it doesn't have, Shadow Bowl. So it's waiting for swipe. And because it starts removing stuff heavily on turn 4 and, transitioning into those Jade turns, it feels like it's not a control deck, but it plays like one. It tries to be one in every single way. And you notice it because, Fel Rage is in, and you got swipe as well. And they're mostly used for removal purposes. Like, unless you're in the late stages of the game against a control deck and you get to Fel Rage face twice with swipe, for 12 damage.
Or
It's
just
often just
Vandal, yeah.
removal. So Jade is technically just the control deck, and they're a really good template for control deck in a way because they end the game before turn 35, which is something that leads to a kind of unfun experience. There's like a big division, I think, in the Hearthstone community where some people say I want to control warrior meta, others say no, not really. Like this is not fun for me.
Yeah.
And I can see both both arguments, and I feel like the template of Jade Druid is more fit for Hearthstone as far as control decks are concerned. But people who love the drawn out 35-minute games will probably disagree.
Well, the thing about Jade Druid is that if it wasn't played, then Control Warrior would. Just because there's a possibility to play it, doesn't mean that Control Warrior should just be dead. I mean, Control Warrior.
No, dude, it's the Kazakus potions. You will get fucked
Yeah,
by
yeah.
Kazakus 5
So-
times more than you will by
Exactly,
Jade Druid.
exactly.
Like,
So
that is a non-issue.
the thing about Jade is that I felt like Druid was, even though you have this infinite, I mean, and people obviously will jump on that, but generally I felt like it was designed, at least pacing wise, correctly. With the
Sure.
just in terms of the mechanic, because the mechanic in my eyes was there for. It was kind of it's kind of similar to Cthulhu, just for old gods, where you want to have this very accessible mechanic, and this is I felt like was targeted more for less skilled players. Give them a power level that kind of feels cool and feels fun, and they like, oh wow, put down this 8/8 and 9/9, and this is fun, and this was felt kind of easy to do. Just when you're first getting into a TCG like Hearthstone. But the issue is that you can't make that powerful. Once it becomes tier 1, tier 2, even tier 3 to some extent.
It's oppressive and
then,
boring.
Yeah, well, then that's the issue, right? Because there's just no skill cap. I mean, the skill ceiling is very, very low for it, and that's when everybody at the top starts to revolt, and that's kind of what we're seeing with Shaman, because Shaman's Jade cards are not. I mean, they're very tempo affecting, because they're all like swing cards. Claw's a swing card. Lightning's a swing card. And then once you get swing cards like that, not to mention they're cheap too. So Brand plus Claw, Brand double. I've seen people double Claw, okay, off of Brand, and it's just.
I mean, I
stupid.
think this is a good point you're bringing up, because people complain about Shaman, but the truth of it is, if you look at the mid-range Jade Shaman, it's a very high skill deck in terms of how many decisions you have to make.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the Jade portion of the deck, that skill doesn't show. Like, that's just not a thing.
Yeah.
The skillful parts is usually, the hero power ring, the using removal at the proper time, using your hero attacks properly, when to push face with your small minions with flame tongues, all those little trays and positioning things that Shaman has to do. Those are the quote unquote Shaman gameplay, like elements that you're recognizing. But the Jade mechanic just feels like, because it has no identity, like it's not a shaman specific thing, it's not a druid specific thing, it's not a rogue specific thing, it's just a mechanic they have access to. So when you're playing a shaman deck now with Jade in it, you're really playing like a mechanic. You're not really playing a shaman. It doesn't feel like a shaman.
And the parts that do feel like a shaman, you're just piggybacking an extra value
exactly.
that you don't normally get, and it's just like, well, yeah, of course it's powerful, right?
Yeah, that's probably the big reason people don't like it, is like the skill doesn't shine enough for it to be as powerful as it was. So hopefully we'll see a bit of a drop in it, but I don't anticipate too big of one. I mean, the best Jade lists, we're not even running Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem right now.
Yeah.
So when you lose Small Time Buccaneer and Patches and Spirit Claws, you're like, that's 4 slots. Oh, well, turns out I can put those back in.
Must suck to get a solid
to put
one
Tunnel
drop
Trog
and
and Totem Golem
one of the
back
best
in.
2 drops. Yeah, exactly. So
good.
one last, I guess, comment, or at least with the Jade, is that there's been some talk about Jade Rogue, which up to date has been the weakest, I think, class in terms of the Jade possibilities. But people are thinking, okay, maybe we have some more time now. Maybe we have some more time to get that 1/1, 1/1 card and be able to time the Jades a little bit more, or maybe even use Raptor to get some value and things like that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Rogue is the only class with I think two cards that synergize with Jade compared to Druid and Shaman, which has 3, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to get that Jade value, you have to either, use Shadow Step for Battlecry or Gadgets and Ferryman, God willing, to bounce back that Jade Spirit back in your hand to replay it, or, of course, Unearth Raptor on either Aya or the
1/1.
I don't even know.
Mhm.
The 1/1 Jade, I don't know what it's called. But yeah, the
The
1/1
Jade Swarmer.
The Jade,
Jade
Swarmer.
Swarmer, right.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to call him Assassin, but yeah, it was Swarmer.
Jade Assassin kills your Jade Golem. Let's go.
Yeah.
But the big problem Rogue suffers is they don't have heal, which might not be as required in this new meta, and they don't have strong AOE. So once they lose the board, like once your opponent gets like a huge board, they really struggle with coming back. Like they get very efficient removal, like Backstab, Shadow Strike, Eviscerate. These are all very mana efficient single target removal. So I think their odds are definitely improved compared to before, but I don't know if it's enough to push them without heals, without good board clear.
I think the better question is, what does it do better than Miracle Rogue with questing and Edwin? And I think the general
Why
consensus
does it
is
always
going to
come
be
back to that?
nothing. Like
It always comes back
that's
to that.
pretty much what it's going to come down to, right? Like,
oh man.
I guess ultimately Rogue already has like a really good archetype, right? They've got a few ways to build it, and now they just get more slots to play with. Because the pirate package was such an integral part of the way they played. Now they can just go back to putting, the guaranteed second counterfeit coin and SIs on top of questing. They feel like going crazy. Vala Teacher might come back. Who knows? Shadow Strike might come back as well. That's a decent answer to mid-range threats. Why not?
Yeah. Agreed. I totally agree. Well, whatever it is, it'll definitely be interesting to see. And the question at this point, when it comes to the nerfs, is: are those the only ones? Like, have they announced them all? Or are we going to hear some more? So that's what I'm kind of wondering at this point. And my gut, and I obviously don't know. I haven't heard from anybody from Blizzard directly. But my gut is that there are going to be some more. And
there have to be more.
Yeah,
the reason they're not releasing more, of course, is rotation happens next set. They can't just make nerfs. Like, let's assume they nerf Shaman to the ground and Totem Golem rotates out, Thunderblood Valiant rotates out, and Tunnel Trog rotates out. Yeah. It's like, okay, what the fuck are we left with here? Like, what is this class now? And if it's just going to be Jade forever, then... I mean, honestly, I just don't want Jade to be good for 2 years, but I'm worried that unless they go crazy on the power creep, that's just going to be by default, like, a deck people flock to all the time.
I think they need... Okay, so... I was talking to this with some folks on our stream last night, is that I think they'll need to add cards that either subtract from the Jade counter or reset the Jade counter, or something that affects that aspect of the mechanic, or they have to go to each individual Jade card and do something to them. And I mean, there's not that many of them, so it wouldn't be like too crazy to do that. But
what if you nerf Aya Blackball? Do you nerf the archetype as a whole? Like, is that enough if you nerf the one card? Because she does create some huge tempo swings.
I think losing Bran is one thing. Losing Bran will already affect it to a degree. So maybe just like one change to Aya could be enough to that. It's just not powerful enough to run.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, when you look at expansion, the last expansion has very like set synergy. So Old Gods is all about, you have Cthulhu, who's all about like Cthulhu cards, and with Gadgetzan it's all about J cards, and you put J cards in from this expansion, and it makes up the core of your strategy. So there's a good chance that Blizzard might even do that again next expansion, which we'll talk about later, where they just have like a lot of power in the new expansion that makes Jade and Cthulhu from before like obsolete. Because when no one's running Cthulhu right now, even though all the Cthulhu cards are in that set, it's not like they lost anything. It's just no one's running it. N'Zoth's not even being run either. Yogg's not being run. I mean, man, Josh Raj is like the 4 Old Gods like that they hyped up for the Old Gods expansion. Like none of them are relevant anymore.
I mean, I think N'Zoth. There's still potential for N'Zoth all the time because
dude. I mean, sure,
it's
but
Cthulhu, But in a way, though, that's kind of what Cthulhu was supposed to be, though. Like Cthulhu was, they gave us Cthulhu cards in the beginning. It was supposed to be for for everybody and not supposed to be too powerful. So I actually thought Cthulhu is the way they designed Cthulhu, the way it turned out was actually fine. Yogg obviously was its own meme and craziness there.
It has its own problems, but it's not broken by its mechanic alone. Like, it's just meant to be a fun card that turned out to be more competitive than they tested.
Yeah.
What worries me right now is, like, so there's Beast Druid. Like, we need to look at the current archetypes that don't exist and think about, Ungoro. I think Beast Druid and Hunter, of course, are going to be a big target. I'm putting $500 on Druid being relevant, like Beast Druid being relevant, and I'm putting another $500 on them never playing it because it's worse than Jade. Like, there we go.
I guess we're jumping to the leaked expansion, which is like two
I'm
topics later. We might as well talk
ahead,
about it now. We might as well talk about it now. So the leaked expansion, and this was coming from, I believe it was a voice actor's website that listed her works. Yeah, go ahead. It's Toast. I think you have more of an insight on it.
Okay, so the voice actress has worked. I don't want to say her name because obvious reason, but the voice actress has worked with Blizzard, specifically Hearthstone as well. Like, she's worked with almost every single Blizzard game, StarCraft, Diablo, Heroes of the Storm, World of Warcraft, and Hearthstone and Whispers of the Old Gods, as well as the classic set. So, she is definitely legitimate, and this website is from her personal website that she links to. So there's no like, oh, maybe this is a fan site. No, it's her website that she has total control over. So basically, she uploaded her resume, and it has Hearthstone, Lost Secrets of Ungoro, which no one's heard of because it's not a thing before then. So everyone knows, okay, obviously it's the new expansion. And when you check the upload date, it was 2 weeks ago. So it's not like it's a very old thing that never happened. It's something brand new. And then after, she was asking people to take it down because she said it was a breach of NDA. And when you see that, you definitely know it's okay. If she's breaching an NDA, that means this information is legitimate. Yeah. So Lost Secrets of Ungoro, and the thing she voices for was called Pterodactyl, Brontosaurus,
all
Hydra,
the dinosaurs, baby,
and Golaka Crawler. So Ungoro is a dinosaur-themed area in World of Warcraft. All those names are very dinosaur-y. And in Hearthstone, dinosaurs are classified as beast. So it's definitely very interesting to see if there's going to be more beast than usual. And obviously, we talked about Beast Druid. How Dracula Op was the OP card for Dragon Priest to push them into competitive viability. I personally think, I personally think we already have that in Menagerie Warden, but it's not good enough by itself. Menagerie Warden needs that supporting beast card to be able to get it over the edge. But I think Menagerie Warden itself is very, very strong. That's the Lost Secrets of Ungoro.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's not hold back. Menagerie Warden is a broken card. It's just there hasn't been a card to like you said, accompany it that just makes it ridiculously broken.
The reason Menagerie is bad is because every time they try to push Beast Synergy in Druid, they make it like a non-beast card. They go, all right, here's the Wild Walker. Right. It's not a beast.
Right.
Here's the Vermin Sensei. It's not a beast. Here's the Menagerie Warden. It's not a beast. So basically, half your deck is beast. The other half is not beast. And then you have no spells. So you cut half of each. You end up spells, beast, and non-beast. And you end up with this clusterfuck of cards that never draws properly. So unlike Houndmaster, it's true, though. Like, you never find the right targets unless you're dreaming of a tiger onto Menagerie.
That's actually a very good point, because Dracula Op is a dragon. And everyone's did you have to make it a dragon? But imagine if Dracula Op wasn't a dragon, right? You'd lose that activation. It's a small thing that you're right, makes a huge difference, because Vermin Sensei, it can't buff another Vermin Sensei. It can trigger beast synergy like Mark of
Houndmaster, right? Like Houndmaster. Imagine a world in which hunters don't have good beasts to play in their deck at all. Houndmaster is pretty bad. When you play Houndmaster on an empty board, it feels like the worst thing you've ever done in your life. So when you play Vermin Sensei without a target, it's just as bad. It's completely horrible. And it's kind of a bummer that they never had the archetype, but with Menagerie around, maybe it's not such a bummer. I don't know.
The question is will there be a beast that actually heals? Because that's what I'm wondering, at least from the standpoint
probably
of
honestly, like the Golaka Crawler could be a good candidate for that, I guess, because the hot springs are supposed to have some restorative properties, I think.
Oh really? Okay, Cool. Yeah, I don't know the lore very much for this.
Well, I mean, in Ungoro, there's a
Dinosaurs.
bunch of stuff.
Dinosaurs. That's it. Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Okay, so if Hunter
yeah,
doesn't get a huge boost from this, then I don't know what to say because this should totally be right up their alley, right?
I mean, I still think it will be a while, but you know, Hunter has access to some pretty good cards already. Like Gadget's Dad gave them good cards. You know, Rat Pack is a good card. They also have the existing Infested Wolf,
true.
which is a good card. They have Shaky Zip Gunner, Trogbeast Rager. These are all decent cards. It's just that they're being overshadowed by the aggro meta. I wonder if we'll actually see Hunter with this post small time Buccaneer nerf even.
It's possible.
So it's not like they need a huge amount of help. But I think we'll definitely see some maybe beast shenanigans coming up.
Maybe
Yeah.
Alley
I could
Cat
see
can be
a
played.
card for hunters is like cost less for each enemy minion or something, like some devil sword type guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Push the class back into viability.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. That's just been the
Oh.
tempo class has just been.
I guess we might as well talk about Hunter right now because I had a thought. You know, Hunter might come back with the expansion. And I realize Hex is a thing, so no. You know, with the nerf that is in 2 weeks, like we're getting a nerf, and I thought Hunter might be better because pirates are gone. But if you think about the existence of Hex and the power of high main and how reliant Hunter is on it, it's pretty hard to really make use of those cards.
Sure. There's also the issues of Reno decks. Hunter is able to temp like mid range you out. With the hero power just slowly bring you a bit lower. Hunter. The recent Hunter has never been like I'm gonna kill you by turn 4. He's gonna play minions. You get tempo value off. Secret. What's that thing called?
A cat trick?
No, the 3 mana 3/4 with the
the Cloak Huntress. Yeah.
Cloak Huntress. Like she's gonna tempo you out, and you're gonna curve into infest the wolf into high main, and then do some punches, and then finish off with a burst off kill command and hero power, right? But with Reno decks and Hex and Polymorph being around, they can't really achieve that goal anymore because once you get that within range of kill command with hero power, they're just gonna drop Reno. And you're not fast enough to stop them. You're going to give them a lot of time to draw into Reno, to draw into Stall, to draw into Frost Nova, taunts. And once that Reno comes down, it's really hard for a Hunter to be able to grind out the game. Because Hunters don't have draw. They can't grind the game out. They play on curve, like pretty strong minions, pretty sticky minions. But if that Reno comes down and you don't have like an insane board already, it's really hard to finish the game as Hunter.
I mean, we saw a bit of it working out in some tournaments, but it's like, here I'm forced to bring Hunter, so let's try to queue it up against my best matchup, which, either you're playing Rogue and you've got the secret package with mid-range, and maybe sometimes you nail it, or some other times you hope you queue into Reno and they never draw what they need. Right?
Yeah. But, when you're measuring against Reno, it's got to be against Reno Lock, and Reno Lock has so much removal, so even if they don't get Reno, They've got Twisting Nether. They've got just Demon Wrath. They're not even using Fell Potion right now, which is kind of crazy. They have like an abundance of it.
I'll say something though, right? Like the nerf to small time in Spirit Claws is it's obviously a band-aid patch. We'll not like lie about it, and it's really about the next expansion. That's what's going to change everything about Hearthstone because Reno, like the current state is basically Reno decks. That will have to fade away. There's never going to be hey, does he have it or does he not anymore?
That's going to be gone.
That's probably going to be gone out of mages and warlocks. So maybe Reno Priest sticks around with the Browse of the Chain, but it's not guaranteed. So we should see a huge drop-off in Reno decks, which suddenly means we're going back to probably a mid-range versus aggro type metagame with some control decks making their way in somehow because they fit. But like Jade is not going to counter control decks forever because it may never be able to compete with the aggro / mid-range lists.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That come up with the expansion
That's a good
rotation.
point.
So it doesn't follow that Jade decks will be OP if the early game decks are too good again in the expansion that's coming up. We'll see.
Yeah, there'll be an interesting balance there. It really all depends on what new cards they add too.
Yeah.
But what we lose is going to be very, very difficult for all these control decks right now, and even Priest. Priest is probably the most likely candidate to be able to still run Kazakus because they have things like Greater Healing Potion that can allow you to heal at least to some 50%, 60% of like a Reno. But at the same time, Priest loses all their dragons. So the Dragon of Operative is ridiculous.
Too, right?
Yeah. Dragon of Operative is
So-
completely worthless unless they have more dragons again.
Yeah, it's 3 expansions worth of content being thrown out. And you're right, Dragon Priest is a class that pulls from, all expansions. Like all their power is like littered throughout. It's not like Jade Idol like Jade Druid where all the
Jade Idol. Here's the class, Jade
I
Idol.
know exactly.
Nailed it.
yeah. So they still have Dragon Op, which is like the best dragon, but you lose Twilight Guardian, which is early game taunt. You lose
Whelp, you lose.
Worm Rest Agent, you lose the Whelp, you lose Corruptor for swing, you lose
basically everything except
lot
for
of things.
the Azure Drake and
I
Twilight.
mean, you still have some options. Netherspite Historian, Bookworm is still sticking around, but I mean, Dragon Priest isn't a top tier deck right now. It's like a solid tier 2 deck, so
Well,
it's not like they're losing. They're not losing that much. But dinosaurs, dragons. I think they're related, right?
well, I
Dragon
mean, I think
flying
they.
reptiles.
Well, I think Dragon straight up Dragon Priest is not top tier, but like the best version of Reno Priest is a Dragon Reno Priest, or at least has some dragons in it, right? Just for the value,
for sure.
So
Netherspite Historian, Draconic Operative.
Yeah,
like you want to
yeah,
make sure you can go long.
Netherspite.
And Bran as well helps a ton in that deck.
yeah,
Win the controlled matchups. Now, one of the decks that I want to see come up, and I think will come up or come back rather, is Cthulhu Druid. I think that deck has been way too absent from the metagame for way
The
too
Kun
long.
deck, right?
It does
I-
better at like board seizing early game than Jade, and that can help it depending on the state of the meta.
Do you think they'll be running the OTK package as well?
They can't because the rotation with Aviana takes it out. But
yeah.
You're right.
that's-
months, yeah.
Yeah, you can't.
Oh,
That does hurt.
man.
That hurts. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
man,
what
I
people
just
don't
realized
understand.
that.
Avion is like
Yeah.
one of my favorite
Oh,
cards.
I know.
too,
So
so.
I'll make a claim here that
It's-
maybe no one will agree with, but I think of the 2 past expansions, the Aviana Cthulhu deck with Kun is by far the most original deck we've had come up.
Mhm.
Of any deck that anybody came up with, whether it's competitive or not, I really don't care. I think this is the single most original deck that we had that was interesting and compelling to play.
Aviana Kun
that's how I feel.
is just insanely fun.
Yeah.
I mean, no one likes
Or
getting
Malgus,
killed
either
from.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. No one
Sure.
likes getting killed from 60 health or 30 health, but it's like that's its only win condition. It's so hard to win if you're not pulling that off, right? Like when you think like combo decks, like back in the day, it's Grim Patron. Like Grim Patron doesn't have to kill you from 30 to 0. They can just kill you with a board for a patron, or
Sure.
combo Druid with Force of Nature and Savage Roar. Like they don't need to do that combo. Sometimes they just seize the board with Innovate into big drops and just kill you regularly. But I'm personally okay with combo decks whose only win condition is the combo.
Yeah.
And that's what Aviana Kun is. Is like you're not killing him with your, Dark Arakoa if you're not playing, Aviana Kun. So yeah, pretty sad to see it go in a couple of months, but we still can't play around with it. And with the nerf of the aggro, it might be a bit more viable because combo decks generally beat slower mid-range decks because you have more time to build it up. So I'm actually excited to try out Aviana Kun in this
Post
new
rotation.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
post patch.
post
sorry.
nerf.
It's almost a new meta.
Almost a new meta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to a kind of good transition there because there was a couple of posts by a couple of the developers, Max and Dean, and Max actually posted something in regards to he's talking about charge, and from this there was a lot of talk about just combo and nothing really that new in terms of like what we think that how Blizzard feels about just combo decks and that aspect. And, so Charge came up again. So they talked a little bit about it. They talked about OTK from Charge. I mean, they didn't really mention too much from the standpoint of, what we've just talked about, which is a non-Charge OTK type of scenario. But, Charge came up. So I guess the thing is they still have issues with trying to figure out how to work Charge into the game without, making it OTK. And, they mentioned one way that they've done it recently is with the Hog Riders, right? Or at least one of the Hog Riders that has Charge. And it's like, yeah, that's crazy situational. So, I mean, you might as well be not putting charge on that, or not adding it there. Right. So
Oh
I
my
guess, what do you guys
God.
think of charge in general? You think it's good for the game? You think it's necessary? And then do you think charge OTK should be in the game?
I mean, I think Max was pretty on point with the problem of cheap charge minions. And if you look at all the nerf cards for the last 2 years, Leroy was nerfed because of the Shadow Step combo. Force of Nature was nerfed because that's charge. Arcane Golem was nerfed. Argent Commander was nerfed, but I don't think it was really because of the charge. It was because it was just too strong. And the charge card from Warrior was changed twice since the beginning. And the War Song Commander, which gives charge, was nerfed. So you can see Blizzard's philosophy on their charge. I kind of agree. It really sucks when your opponent Leroy's PO into Faceless Manipulator for 20 damage.
That's very specific, right? We're talking about Emperor Thorson. So, like, I feel like a lot of the problems with charge were, I wouldn't say solved, but addressed in the past, because they've realized that past a certain mana cost, your ratio of mana to attack on charge minions has to be lower than 1. Right? Like, the only
Yeah.
exception that exists still is Leroy Jenkins. And, Arcane Golem had to be nerfed. If, Wolf Rider is 1-to-1, the biggest baddest 4-drop with charge is Kor'kron Elite, which is class specific, so you don't run into the issue since the class doesn't have buffs that it can suddenly copy unless it went, Kor'kron double inner rage rampage faceless, something ridiculous.
Kor'kron's probably the best implementation of it. Like,
I mean, the thing with Kor'kron is, like, it's still potentially broken because of the potential of inner rage and everything, but it's not like a power overwhelming, which is 1 card for 4 attack. Inner rage is 2 cards for 4 attack, which is of course a lot more difficult to manage. And as they toned down the amount of damage you get per mana cost, in the mid range area, it's been a lot more healthy. Like, it's so tough because, like, one of the things with charge that sucks is I wish the mechanic had been implemented to where you can never go face with it, and it's only a minion trade. And worst case scenario, it gets dropped onto the board, and it's only a vanilla guy. You know what I mean? Like, it either trades now, or let's say Wolf Rider was a 3/2 that couldn't attack face. You'd be fine with it. You'd be like, okay, play a 3/2, trade into my guy, or play a 3/2 that stays there. It's like perfectly fine.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever feels not terrible losing to a charge minion, not losing to Leroy Copeland. Like, it's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling losing to Force of Nature Savage. Like, Stormy Knight, like Max mentioned, is like, it's a good card because it's charge and it removes a minion. And cards like that I'm totally fine with because it's situational and you're paying a premium to get the charge bonus. I just hate it when charge mechanics are used for face.
Yeah, I would like to see a card that's, I think a card that's been interesting for a long time, and it's exactly what you guys are talking about, is Ice Howl, right? The issue with Ice Howl is that it's just too expensive. There are all these charge cards that are just too expensive that won't be used because of that. If there was a cheaper Ice Howl, it might be kind of interesting, because that way it's essentially a removal card. And we do have some removal cards that have Death Rattle that clear the board and things like that, but we've never actually had something charge related where you actually make decisions as to how you want to remove the board. And given that Shaman with totems and things like that have been like super big, and we've been using things like Kor'kron or whatever it is, right, charge wise, just to clean up the board a little bit, it'd be cool if they just forced that upon a card text. That'd be kind of cool.
Like when my opponent used Kor'kron to remove, like, say, a Worm Rest Agent or a Northside Crack, like, that's good. He kills my minions and gets to keep a minion on board. And
I agree.
Like, that's using the charging mechanic. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, more of that, less of Leroy.
Base.
I wonder if they're gonna ever change Leroy again. I mean, they already changed it once from 4 to 5.
Well, Leroy Faceless is fine, right? Like, when Emperor rotates out, that's an issue that kind of self-resolves. One of the things that, like, so I want to make the comparison of charge minions to weapons and spells, obviously, right? Like, that's the biggest, most obvious comparison you can make. Spells have the trade-off of, some of them at least can go face or kill a minion, which is effectively what a charge minion that would stay on the board be, except it gets to deal recurrent damage to face if it sticks around too long, blah, blah, blah. So, like, those two mechanics are very similar. Now, weapons are a different class entirely because there are self-contained charge minions that don't they don't die when they trade. They don't trade until they've exhausted all their durability, and the ways you can target them is very limited, which is why it's such a scary mechanic. To an extent, weapons are potentially more of a design problem, not a problem, but like a difficult area to balance than charge minions, I think. It's just they haven't created weapon buffs that are so obscene that you go like +4 attack this turn and then Wind Fury to your guy. The one time it happened was Doomhammer, where you had Doomhammer with Rockbiter just going face for 1 billion damage.
Yeah.
So they've been cautious on the weapon side, but haven't done so with minions in the past. But they're very much realizing it. You don't see them print any charge minions anymore out of the blue for no reason.
They can do so much with weapons too. I mean, we even talked about it. They can use it as them holding an item. I'd like it to be diverse, like they did with Sword of Justice a long time ago. It doesn't have the buff stuff because obviously that's really powerful, but having just each durability have potentially multiple uses, I think is a very interesting thing that they've stopped doing. In terms of.
I mean, they did it with Medivh, right?
Yeah, Medivh. That's true. Yeah.
So
do more of that. I think that would be really cool.
I think the small issue is that it's hard for that to exist if it's a weapon meta. Because right now everyone's running ooze, right? Because if you're a control deck or slower deck, you're running ooze for shaman, rogue. I mean, not rogue, but shaman and warrior. And sometimes when you get a Reno mage, you're like, okay, I run ooze because everyone I'm using it for almost every matchup. And if my opponent drops Medivh, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna break your Atish. And it's happened a lot whenever I played a Reno matchup. Just because it's a weapons meta, I'm running ooze obviously, and it really punishes people for trying to play Medivh right now. So if they were to introduce those kind of high value weapons, that's not going to go face, but you can take advantage of it.
Fool's Bane type cards I like, honestly. That's
interesting.
infinite attacks in one turn. Wow, that's broken until you realize it's not, and that feels great. I love the weapon design in vanilla of Hearthstone. I think was some of the most boring stuff they could have come up with. Choose over champion. The most creative one was Eagle Horn Bow by far. That was the one that had the most thought put into it, probably with you gain extra durability when you have secrets. It creates this very difficult to not to navigate or to set up situation, whereas most of the other weapons were just okay, you swing here, now you swing there, and you're done. Whereas now they're going in the direction a bit, fleshing out some of the designs, I think. And I like it.
Okay, let's see. Another tidbit from Dean, which XR, was that he did an interview that answered or gave us a little bit of details as to just how the balance team is comprised of, just even numbers. I didn't actually know that the design team is consisting of 15 people, and the balance team specifically is only 4 people. And basically those 4 people are the ones that test, amongst themselves, that figure out, just maybe how they, interpret the balance, or maybe trying to anticipate what might happen, or just what kind of impact it can have on the meta. So, you guys get a chance to look at this. What do you guys think? Or what do you guys think of just the number? Does that surprise you that that's 15? It consists of 15 people on the design team, which cover, everything, which is designing, the ladder system, designing, arena, and just all these different aspects of Hearthstone as a product. And then obviously the 4 people. Is that low to you guys?
No, I mean, it's actually a bit higher than I expected.
Okay.
I thought there was going to be just 10 people on the design team. But this includes more back end stuff as well, ladder, rank system design, which we don't
matchmaking
usually think about. When people think design, they kind of think, oh, card design,
right.
No, not at all. Yeah.
But no, this is referring to quest, tavern brawls, balance.
Beams.
I think it's a decent number. I don't really understand design too much, but it feels like Hearthstone's it's a smaller, more compact game compared to League of Legends or CS:GO, where there's so much numbers tuning you can do. You can improve something by 1% or 2%. It has a huge effect. But with Hearthstone, everything's pretty contained.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have more people, is it going to be a problem with too many chefs in the kitchen, where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
isn't this cool? Isn't that cool? I
In
think
a
having,
nutshell, that's what happens in development very often. But
Well, it's tough because they have different game types, and I think when you're talking about designing and having more people in more game types, then yeah, that when you design one card, right, everybody has a say, and as to like how that might affect their particular game type, and it might be hard to actually get new cards out that way, but there are, I feel like a lot of those 15 people like wear different hats. It sounds like they work together a lot. They do all, like it says, they do probably 20 bullet points each, and so there's a lot of that. At the same time, I wish they had. I don't know. It's like in some ways, I wish they. I'm not sure if it's a high number or a low number, to be honest. But it would have been interesting to see if those 15 people were divided into more buckets instead of like it'd be cool to have somebody that's purely designing just the I don't know, the PvE aspect of it, right? Or just somebody that's
what they do. I
designing
think I'm pretty sure they take feedback, but some people have like a set role that they're working on. Like, for instance, Pat Nagel is working heavily, from my understanding, on Tavern Brawls. At least
Right,
last
that's
year,
right.
that's what it was. So, for instance, like they have had that division occur. The issue is, at some point, if you don't hire generalists, you end up with a shit game with a bunch of over specialized like people that don't get the general vision of the game. And it's almost at this level of development, it's almost incompetence to hire over specialized people that don't understand like a broader vision of your product. And in this case,
sure,
you can't just hire any dude. That's the problem. Like, sure, they get a bunch of applications, but hire a guy who knows absolutely nothing about game design in general. He might come up with a really cool card that is just not fit. So then you have to pass it on to other people to take his workload and try to filter it down, which sometimes they do a bit of that, but they have to.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is like it's not the card aspect of it. It's like none of that. I'm just
has to do with cards. Yeah, sure.
For me, it's just like it's more the general product. Like the design architecture of the general product. It's hard for me to figure out what that is with just even just his explanation here. And it's not like he's supposed to. It's just I'm trying to figure out how just the structure of the team is, because. Because we talk about things like tournament mode and all these things that are completely different elements that have nothing to do with the cards.
Yeah, what's the development flow? Yeah, like, who starts with an idea and where does it go from there, right?
Or just even like how it's even
passed around and how it gets done. That's the question.
Yeah, and then we can obviously get a sense for what how much they can even handle, because 15 people doesn't feel like they can handle much more than what they're doing. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at there. But it's great that he's telling, again, this is more information. This gives us a better feel for like, how much they can do as a team, and maybe that they're growing. It sounds like they're hiring more people. Puffin just got hired, as a designer this past week. So congrats to him for joining the team too, because he's literally come from the bottom all the way up, now all the way to a designer, kind of like Ixar did too. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so Puff and X are they're both on the design team now, and these are people who are played at a high level. Like I know Puffin is able to hit top 100 legend on NA each time, and a lot of people on social media, they're like, oh my god, does the Hearthstone design team even play Hearthstone? Like, have they tried ladder? It's like, no, they have some really
reels, and those guys have all been competitive players.
They obviously also have people just designing like who focus more on the fun stuff, and that's something that Hearthstone is kind of it's a big split between like serious competitiveness versus just playing cards because you want to have fun because you like that card. Except the second part, you don't usually see it because it's these people don't care about Hearthstone that much, and to like go on the forum, it's like, oh my god, this card sucks. And
I can't have fun with this card. They'll still put Mayor Noggenfogger in their deck, and like to go to that point and address something that I think people kind of lose sight of is Hearthstone was made by a small clique of 5 dudes who are like, let's make a fucking mobile game that's awesome and fun for people to play.
Well, no, they said let's make a game first, and then it became a mobile game. Yeah,
right. But it's like it was a probe after they realized what platform it was best fit for. It turned out that mobile was pretty good at the time, and it became like it blew up. But you treat this game as a project that was never meant to be esports, and then these 5 guys unexpectedly have to hand out their game to more people. They have to invite people in the team and try to make sure that vision gets across, and that people who come in and work on it don't I would say pervert it, but take the game that they wanted and make it something else. And then as time passed, we, the community, took their game, their cherished little project, and we said, "Fuck it, just fuck your game. We want something else entirely. We want esports." And that they had to respond to that, and so they made a ladder system. They tried the HCT. They tried to just build up this competitive community, and we're at the fulcrum right now of something for Hearthstone that I think is going to define its future development. I think the structural changes that are happening internally, from my understanding, are trying to orient the game towards what the community, quote unquote, wants, while still maintaining, the casuals happy. Because at the end of the day, the casuals are not going to bitch about stuff on Reddit. They're just not going to do that, and they're still going to buy card packs, and they have to keep them in mind. And that's something that goes beyond what they want their game to be.
Yeah,
a lot of times where I talk about like, new cards or more advanced topic, like I get a lot like even simple questions. I was playing Madam Goya the other day.
Yes.
And I still had people in Twitch chat saying, "Hey, can you mouse over that card? I don't know what it does." I'm like,
yeah,
what?
exactly. Yeah, they don't even know the cards that come in.
I'm not
It's like,
surprised.
just
Madam
not catering
Goya,
to
like
them.
nobody plays Madam Goya.
Like
so.
when you ask me, like I can name you like pretty much every card in the set, but like we live in a like the content we have access to is designed for people who like understand the game, who loves the game. But there's just this huge audience that are casual and they don't know every card. They don't even know Wrath. I did a Miss Lethal series and I was presenting a situation and like 50% of the comments were like, "Oh, you could have just wrathed him in his face." I'm like, what? Because like
I don't know if it's a meme or for real.
it's not a meme. I swear to God,
man,
it's 100% serious.
Beta.
Like, it goes to show you, like, there's definitely a lot of casual players who's not that into Hearthstone, but they just like watching, the highlights, the content,
and that's great.
Yeah,
that's fine.
That's fine.
That's completely fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they just have to, obviously, the balance that they have to or the challenge that they have is to keep that balance between having it be a competitive game while still, maintaining that casual aspect to it. And that's tough. That's not easy to do, but I think they're starting to try to get acclimated, or they're getting acclimated to doing it and trying to, I don't know, get it in at least the product in a position that they can make changes. Because, one of the other things that they said in this interview, at least Dean said in this interview, is that it made it sound like they would make the changes right now. They could. They still can't make the changes because it has to go through the whole approval process for the different platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't know all of the details about that, but that's the issue again. And that's why this change to the client in the update that's going to allow for server changes, like to be pushed to the clients, will be a big deal.
That's a huge deal in terms of programming. So basically the idea is that they won't have to go through this 5 platform approval process each time. They gotta go to Android, iOS, and PC right now.
PC,
yeah. And it's all different. PC they have more control over because of Battle.net.
God, no consoles.
But like iOS, imagine if Hearthstone was on PS4 and Xbox as well. They have to go through, Microsoft and then some. Yeah. So like, I mean, I've done work in iOS. Like, you have to submit it to Apple. You gotta wait for them to approve it.
They don't tell you anything either. Like, if you have one thing that's wrong in your config file or any of your files, they don't even tell you beforehand. So there's no pre-validation. You just have to start.
You have to wait
again.
for approval, which
sucks.
Takes a few days. And if they reject it, you gotta make the changes and resubmit it and wait for approval again.
Exactly.
Do you guys question? Do you guys know like profitability, how it ranks in the Blizzard games?
The top, 100% the top. I
think Overwatch might be at the top right now.
Oh yeah, Overwatch might be bigger. You're right. Actually, Overwatch probably has to be.
I think Hearthstone's second.
When you compare the teams, like I imagine Overwatch has a big budget for marketing, like big team for design, like so much money to spend.
Clearly, they're putting statues in big ass cities and stuff. I think
when I look at Hearthstone, I feel like they're doing really well for Blizzard in terms of money wise, but they don't get that much love from the company overall. Like all three of us were at BlizzCon this year, right? And when they announced, each game goes up and they do their whole spiel. And when Hearthstone went up, it was like, for me, I thought like everyone went silent. It's like, oh, let's just sit through this Hearthstone now. And it's like World of Warcraft, Legion, yeah. Like Overwatch, Sombra, like, yeah. But when it was Hearthstone, it was just not much.
It's just a different space. I mean, even the style of the the hype video was, I mean, it was creative, like, but it's the kind of still, like still animated or animated still type of video. And compare that to the CGI stuff. I mean, of course, the CGI stuff's going to get super hype. The Overwatch animations. I mean, come on, compare that to the gadgets and moving stills. That's not going to generate as much.
It just goes to show like how casual Hearthstone really is. Most of the audience there weren't for Hearthstone. Like, no one's going to BlizzCon. Not a lot of people are going to BlizzCon for Hearthstone. They're going for World of Warcraft, for Guild. I mean, there was definitely a lot like people there for Hearthstone. It's just compared to the other games, it was pretty weak. But I will also say this: Hearthstone probably had the most people watching because it's so easy to just kind of like walk in and just relax, sit down, and watch the finals because you don't really need to know what's going on. It's like, oh, he's playing this card, all these cool effects happening.
Yeah.
It's very accessible, which makes it so hype.
That's why it's so popular. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we move on? And before we actually move on to the next topic, which, well, we spent a lot of time on that, I wanted to give a shout out to just some of our iTunes folks and our patrons. So for those tuning in or listening to the show on iTunes or even Google Podcasts, thanks for doing that. And we actually have a few folks that have left us some 5-star reviews and a few nice comments. So we want to give a shout out to user SSSSSS, Andrin, and Ispira11 for doing that for us. It helps the show a lot. For those of you that don't know and do listen to the podcast, if you do leave 5-star reviews, it helps other folks be able to discover or find Value Town whenever they're searching for Hearthstone podcasts. So if you do enjoy it, please go and leave us a nice review. That would be really, really awesome. And then, of course, Value Town is supported 100% by our Patreon, patreon.com/ValueTown. And we have like a good number. We have a really good group of patrons that do support the show. And, the show really would not happen if it wasn't for these folks. So, we're super appreciative. We love you guys, and we love you guys so much that we want to give you guys a shout out each week, or at least some of you guys, because we can't just sit there and list, just go through every single name every single week. So I want to give a big shout out to our legendary producers, Mike T, Lewis G, and Dean P, as always. And then, of course, a few others: NorCal BW, Esser G, Johnson C, Grant A, James R, Michael O, Brendan T, and Michael H. Thank you so much, guys, for supporting the show. And if you guys, are interested in, supporting the show, or maybe, throwing a pledge our way, go ahead and check out patreon.com/ValueTown and some of the milestone rewards we've got there. But speaking of milestones, we still are over the Smilestone milestone.
Oh no,
so
not
it's
again.
time. It is time. Not again. Come on. We're trying to get to Lapstone. We're actually really close to Lapstone. So those of you interested in maybe upgrading Smilestone to Lapstone, you guys should check it out.
What? No. I'm not gonna take a maybe for that one.
Okay.
At some point, we have to get somebody with the coolest laugh in the Hearthstone community. Get them on the show.
Who would that?
I don't know, but Ben Brode, perhaps. We get like the first Lapstones with Brody Brode.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
But right now we're talking Smilestone right now. So.
Oh jeez.
this is the moment, guys, that we show our joy that we have for Hearthstone, which has been, maybe few and just a little bit too few these days in Hearthstone. But we've got some love, so this is the time where we just show our smile for a good 20 seconds here. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, yes, 20 seconds. What smile was that, Toast? Man, you were scaring me there, man. You look like the Joker or something like that.
I learned it from Ponyhoff.
Oh no!
If I had that clip of the big flag doing the circle, just bouncing up and down, going, "Oh!" I would do it right now.
God. Well, I guess since you segmented so well to that, I guess we'll be talking about that next. But anyways, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for the patrons for obviously making that milestone, and hope you enjoyed this milestone.